Good evening, everyone. This is Artasia with PAACH tonight, and once again, we're here to talk about our upcoming homeschooling convention, Transform. It's March 17th through the 19th, and we are really excited. Registration is currently open, so if you have not registered, please go over to our website, paatch.org, and hop on there and register. We've got some great classes and great speakers, and tonight, one of our speakers we're going to be talking to is Zan Tyler. Good evening, Zan. It's great to have you here.
Well, thank you. It's so great to be here.
Well, we're really excited to have you participating in our homeschooling convention. And just to give everybody a little bit of a background on you, you've been homeschooling since I believe it's 1984, correct?
Yes. And so we started homeschooling in 84 and finished in 2005. And since then, I just continue to be involved in the homeschooling community.
Well, homeschooling is great. I love homeschooling, and my oldest is 21 and graduated from college, and my youngest is 6. So I still have ways to go, but I plan on being in it for a while.
That's good. That's super.
For our pioneer homeschoolers, one of those pioneer homeschoolers, because when you first started homeschooling, you were threatened with jail from the state superintendent, correct?
I was. We had actually been turned down by our local school board. We had to hire, when we started homeschooling, we didn't know one person in the world who homeschooled. There were no support groups, state organizations. HSLDA had been formed on the West Coast, but it wasn't an organization for the people at that point, all across the United States. So I just had to look hard to find an attorney who had ever heard the word homeschooling. And then our school board turned us down, and I decided I would go visit the state superintendent of education. He was a friend of my mother's. When he was getting his PhD, he observed her classroom for 3 to 6 months. So I called him and asked him if I could come see him, and he said, absolutely, I'll clear my schedule. So it's a long story, but when I went into the story about why I had been backed into a corner in terms of homeschooling by my local school board, I thought he would say, Zan, you are obviously a mother who loves your children. Let's see how we can solve your problem. And instead he said, well, if you can continue to pursue homeschooling, I will have you put in jail for truancy.
Wow.
And so that was a moment from a friend I was not expecting.
Right.
And so the Lord just put me, that was my Patrick Henry, give me liberty or give me death moment. And
and since then, you've been advocating for homeschooling. You've started the South Carolina Association of Independent Homeschoolers. You've served on the parentalrights.org, and you're currently speaking for BJU Press. Is that about all sums it up of your background with the homeschooling?
Well, yeah, a little bit. It's been a very rich, full life. We were in the legislature for 8 years before we got good homeschooling laws passed in South Carolina. So my oldest son was in the 9th grade, his first year of high school, when I looked at him and said, do you realize this is the first year since we've been homeschooling that we haven't been involved either in a legislative issue or a court case? And then when the SCAES law was passed, the organization we started, it was the first time in the country that the state Department of Education or a state legislature had given a private organization like us equal power as local school boards in approving homeschooling programs. So that was a really big deal. So we've seen a lot of things. I like to say the first 16 years I homeschooled, it was really about freedom fighting and setting up an organization to make homeschoolers legal. I did the parentalrights.org thing. And then the second half of my homeschooling career has really been spent in publishing and building infrastructures and curriculum and resources that give homestaying moms staying power. And so the older I get, the more committed I am to homeschooling as not only a great way to educate your children, but to strengthen your family and raise kids who love the Lord. I just think it's unparalleled.
Well, as a current homeschooler, I'm definitely thinking those pioneer homeschoolers like you that have helped us establish homeschooling freedoms. And in fact, I was just in DC last week with HSLDA's Capital Day. And it kind of brings me into my first question here for you. How important is it to advocate for our homeschooling freedoms, and what can we do to stay aware, be on guard for those homeschooling freedoms? Because I think a lot of us today are maybe a little bit complacent because we're enjoying those homeschooling freedoms and we weren't the ones that fought for those to be in power. So can you kind of help explain that a little bit?
Yeah, I think the first thing we need to remember is that if we don't continue to work for our freedom, it can go away. So I just applaud you for being involved in the HSLDA Capital Program. And I would say one of the most important things is to keep up with what's going on in your own legislature in terms of parental rights, homeschool freedom, other educational issues. And usually your state organization will be aware of those things. HSLDA is aware of those things. Y'all are involved in a very large local group, and I'm sure you are aware of those things, but we can't live with our head under the sands. We need to know what's going on. I would encourage everybody to get to know your state representative and senator, because local government is so important in educational issues. And we think that's very intimidating, but it's really important for state legislators and senators to put a face with homeschooling and for it to become personal for them. I can't tell you how many Senate Education and House Education committees I've testified before where the difference was one family who had gotten to know their legislator, and he or she says, you know, I thought homeschoolers were crazy. And then I met the Smith family and they're fabulous and their kids are amazing and they're so well educated and well behaved and socialized. And so it really, that's one of the biggest safeguards we have, is really personally getting to know our representatives. Is not as hard as you think. They love to know their constituents.
That is true. I know that's one of the things that HSLDA was mentioning last week, is trying to develop a personal relationship with your legislators. And in fact, I talked to our two state senators' offices last week, and I was a little nervous because our state senators are Democrats, and they don't tend to speak up for homeschooling freedoms a lot. But honestly, the conversations that I had were really great conversations with their office. They were really open and willing to listen, and they wanted to know our ideas and what our concerns were. So I definitely encourage our listeners and our viewers to get involved and to meet those state senators and those representatives and to spend time with them, and, you know, offer them to sit down with a cup of coffee and just kind of chat with them and see what's, you know, what they're speaking about and what they're advocating for in the legislature, and then let them know your concerns. It's definitely a great way to be aware of things in the legislative department. So I definitely agree with that. But let's get it talking about some of your workshops that you're going to be doing for convention. So we have homeschooling, an educational, spiritual, and family revival moment. That's Sweeping America. Motivated Kids Move Mountains. Life in the Fiery Furnace, How to Heal and Prevent Homeschool Burnout. Those are all classes, and then a couple more that you might be able to get to on Saturday. So let's talk about one of the ones I saw here is Motivated Kids Move Mountains. Let me see if I can get that right. Motivated Kids Move Mountains. Okay, so without going into too much, because we don't want to give too much of the details away of the workshop, how can we motivate our kids, especially the ones, you know, I have one of those that just lacks motivation and drive, and it's like sometimes pulling teeth to get them to get going.
Right. Well, I think the greatest thing we can do is really become students of our children, study them, get to know them. What is their learning style? What is their strength? What are their weaknesses? What, like Eric Little said, the missionary who also won the gold medal as a runner, and he said, God called me to be a missionary, but he also made me fast, and when I run, I feel his pleasure. So what are those things in our children's lives that really just give them that internal eternal pleasure and passion. And so I think that's the beauty of homeschooling, is whatever curriculum we use, we get to know our children. I can remember talking to a friend of ours who was a doctor, and the daughter was totally unmotivated, but they found a little pig as a pet, one of these little pet pigs, and this child fell in love with the pig. So all of a sudden, all their sciences were built around this pig. Now, he was a doctor, so they were doing their due diligence in terms of their academics, but this was the one thing that spoke to this child and brought her out of herself and gave her an interest. And I think that's the great thing about homeschooling, whether it's music or sports or politics, or for my daughter, broadcast journalism, community theater, all those types of things. What is it that motivates your kids? I remember reading a book called Growing Up Learning, is out of print now, by Dr. Walter Barbie, when I was just beginning to homeschool and didn't understand learning styles. But one thing he said is, you'll never find a group of adults sitting around a room operating from their weaknesses. But what do we do in a classroom if a kid is bad in math? We give him 25 extra math problems instead of cutting the number in half. So we need to help them learn how to manage their weakness, but live in the realm of their strengths.
Very encouraging. I have a personal story. I mentioned to you before we started recording here that me and my son went to Capitol Day in Washington, D.C. last week. And honestly, when I had this opportunity presented to myself, he wasn't my first child that I thought of. He's one that is a little bit, doesn't have as much drive, and he kind of goes at his own pace. And so I didn't really think he wasn't any consideration. I didn't think that he would be interested in this. It was my husband's idea to bring him. And I presented it to them. He got so excited about this trip and about being able to see some of the Washington, D.C. sites. And one of the things that really just made him so excited was he was studying art, and he came across this Vincent van Gogh painting, and he found the museum is in Washington, D.C. It's at the National Gallery of Art. And so he asked me, he's like, can we go to this National Gallery of Art so I can see this painting in person? And so that was one of the things that we did. And I kid you not, my son sat there, and we spent like 3 hours at the National Gallery of Art, and he looked at every single painting in that museum.
Amazing. Yes. Yes.
He was just excited about it.
It's great to find those things that just light that fire within them. Yeah, I agree.
And it was just a great opportunity just to bring some hands-on learning, something that, it's not necessarily book work, but it brings it to life for him. So it was a great opportunity. So I definitely can attest to that. What you're saying is finding their strengths and finding what they enjoy, because that's the opportunity that me and my son had last week. So moving on here, we talked about kids and motivating kids. Let's talk about moms.
Okay.
You're doing a workshop about preventing homeschooling burnout. I know, at least I've had this experience now. You get excited in August when you start school, and you're just revved up and you're ready to go. But come January comes around, and you're starting to experience that burnout. As moms, we have a lot on our plate. We homeschool, we have a house to keep, we have church, our kids. Some of us own our own businesses. So what is 1 to 2 things that we could to prevent that burnout, that homeschool burnout?
Well, I think it's interesting. I have written a book that I'll be bringing with me. We just, I work with BJU Press now. And so they allowed me to write this book on burnout, and we give it away just as a blessing to moms. And so I have that with me. It's called Refined, a homeschool mom's call to trust. And so at the end of the book, you hear the stop, drop, and roll when it comes to fire and real burns. And so I do a lot of things in the book talked about stop, drop, and remember, or stop, drop, and go outside. Just the beauty of the outdoors for kids. Stop, drop, and take a break. I read this book called A Brilliant Idiot by this man who was a PhD and very learning disabled. And he said that he would wake up as a little boy with this brain fog, and he knew going to school would be useless. He went to a primitive school in Canada, and they would beat him when he couldn't perform. And so I can just remember waking up some mornings and realizing school is not happening. Formal school is not happening in this house today. I can tell by everybody's mood and disposition. The great thing about homeschooling is the world is really your classroom. You can, in pre-COVID days, we're getting back to this where you can take field trips. You can go to the great outdoors. You can go to Washington, D.C. You can travel. You can see the world. You can be involved in service projects. All of these things that get us beyond ourselves. And I think prevent burnout. People will ask me, we've homeschooled for 21 years. Did you ever think about quitting? And I want to say, yes, only every day, because homeschooling is that thing that brings us to the end of ourself and our resources on a daily basis. And so one of the things I talk about in this book is are the three guys, the three Hebrew guys who were thrown into the fiery furnace. And the minute they were thrown in, what did they see? They saw Christ. And how different their lives must have been from that moment on until they went to be with him in heaven, because they saw Christ in all of his glory. They were unchained. They had no signs of burn or smoke on their clothes. And so I think a lot of times in our most difficult days, it's when Christ is with us the most. He's with us in the fire and the flames don't burn us. He promises that he'll walk with us through the floods and through the fires. And I think really with homeschooling is such a sanctifying process for moms. It puts us on our knees. It puts us with the Lord, and we can draw from that supernatural strength. So I think burnout happens when you're in the fire, but you don't see the fourth man. And so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the practical side of things that you can do to avoid or heal burnout. So it's a really great session that I love doing with moms. If you've homeschooled for more than 24 hours, you've had some kind of burnout.
That's true. One of my favorite scripture verses is Job 23:10, where it talks about, Job says that you try me, but when you know the path I'm going to take, and when I get through it, I will come forth as gold. And it's just really encouraging to know that even though we're experiencing these trials, even though we're experiencing this burnout, that as we go along the path, because Christ's not that we're going to take, that when we get to the end of it, that we're going to be coming forth as gold, as treasures for him.
That's right. Amen. Amen.
Still talking about moms, before we close here, why don't you give us a couple minute taste on what we're going to experience for Mom's Night Out, because we have Mom's Night Out Friday night. So for moms, we're really excited about having that opportunity.
Okay. I just think the most fun about Mom's Night Out is being away from your kids, away from your husband. And I don't mean that in any type of rude way, and being with women where you can just focus on who you are, your friendships, fun together. Sometimes we just all need a little bit of fun. We need a little bit of fellowship, and we need some chocolate. I mean, life is better with chocolate. And so I just think these Moms Night Out are the greatest just things in the world for our mental health, our emotional health, our spiritual health, just to kind of remember who we are as a person. And so I think it'll be a lot of fun. I would encourage women to come to that.
Well, we are definitely excited about it. I'm definitely excited. I plan on being there. So it is Friday evening of convention. So convention is March 17th through the 19th. We start March 17th, Thursday night, with the new homeschooler night, and then Fridays opening up our regular convention. And then that evening, Friday night, we're going to have Mom's Night Out. So we're really excited about that. And so I want to thank you, Zan, for taking the time out to talk with me tonight and kind of give us a prelude to what we can expect for convention. We are really thankful and excited to have you come and join us.
Well, I'm so excited to be there. I hope everybody will come out to this great conference. Don't stay home when you can get out and be encouraged. Come support this effort, hear the speakers, meet the board, be with like-minded people. We're sort of losing the art of gathering in our country. We need to realize there's strength in numbers and being together. So come. It's hard to get away, but come. I can't encourage you enough to come.
Yep, it's hard, but it is good. So we're really excited again. Transform Homeschool Convention, March 17th through the 19th. You can currently register if you're a PAACH member. Our website at paach.org. And if you're not a member, we have an option for you still available on our website. So you can check that out. Go on over to our website. Everyone who registers by this Friday will be in the running for a prize because we're giving away giveaways. We're excited about giveaways. Everybody likes to win free stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Especially homeschool moms.
That's right. So once again, thanks, Dan, for joining us tonight. And we hope to see everyone at our convention, March 17th through the 19th.
That's right. We'll see you in 2 months.